The light of the West and its great capital city had been snuffed out decades ago. Britannia, Gaul, Hispania, North Africa, and most devastatingly of all, Italy had fallen from the hands of the empire which had conquered worlds. But one man still dreamed to reverse this. One man would pour his entire life into restoring that glory his empire once held. That man would fail. That man's name was Justinian, the last emperor of the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire to dream of restoring Rome. He and his generals would go on to reconquer many territories many thought of as long gone: Tunisia and Morocco, Italy, and even parts of Iberia. But his success wasn't to last, as he met the longtime rival of Rome on the battlefield, Persia. His armies were ravaged by a plague that would go on to decimate his entire empire, in all of Europe, the bubonic plague. The Byzantine armies were crushed, not by Persia, but by this deadly disease, and the whole of the empire was drained as it fought a losing war against it. But I want to imagine a world in which, somehow, the plague never struck the Romans, a world in which they decisively crushed the Persians, a world in which Justinian succeeded. The reasons the plague never hit isn't important. All I care about is that the Byzantines aren't decimated by the bubonic plague during the reign of Justinian. Without this massive killer, the Byzantine armies are able to crush Persia decisively, securing the eastern flank of the empire. This also means Justinian himself never gets the plague, so he is able to continue pursuing his ambitions of conquest and glory. The years following would see small conflicts with Persia to maintain dominance and even the potential seizing of Mesopotamia, a province that hadn't been a part of Rome since 117. Justinian's next campaign would be against more Visigoths in Iberia, expanding Roman control in the region. By Justinian's death, Rome would be on its way back to its former glory, and the Byzantines would be ready to defend against any threat, and one was coming. I see no reason why Muhammad wouldn't still be born in this timeline, and die, leaving the Caliphate to begin its expansion. This time, the Romans would be much better prepared for this threat. The Caliphate would still most likely conquer Mesopotamia, Syria, and the Levant, and even Egypt. But the Byzantines would, however, be able to effectively defend the heartland of Anatolia and the wealthy provinces of North Africa. Then, when the Caliphate was busy conquering Persia, the Romans would be able to sweep back into their territories west of the Euphrates. The following decades and even centuries would see continuous wars between the Byzantines and the Caliphates for these regions, but I think the Byzantines would have firm control by the 700s to 800s, just in time for the next major power to come knocking at their doorstep. Being a Catholic, Charlemagne would love to restore the Pope and Catholicism back into Italy and Rome. I would see this coinciding with another war between the Arabs and the Byzantines, leading the Franks to be successful. Charlemagne would be declared Roman Emperor by the Pope like in our timeline, but following the Byzantines once again handling the Arabs, they would be ready to retake their home city once again. However, this wouldn't be much of a challenge at all, as following Charlemagne's death, the Frankish Empire would be split into 3 kingdoms just like in our timeline. The Kingdom of Italy would see itself swiftly conquered by the Byzantines, who would be ready to finally march back into Gaul. While I don't think a complete conquest of West Francia is very plausible at all, a war to connect Italy and Iberia and finally envelop the Mediterranean again would be a major prestige booster for the Romans, who would almost entirely be back to their former state in territory and glory, with their final expansion being the conquest and subjugation of most of Iberia, which would convert to Orthodoxy. In this timeline, Catholicism would be on its hind legs. The Pope would most likely find a home in West Francia, while the entire Mediterranean would become Orthodox. Islam would never come to dominate Syria, Egypt, North Africa, or Iberia. Orthodoxy would be the largest religious group in the Western world. The new Roman Empire would be pretty well connected, as it wouldn't stray too far from the Mediterranean. Its riches would keep the empire stable and prosperous into the next millennia, most likely only falling in on itself from plague and overextension in the 12 to 1300s. Justinian would be thought of as one of the most influential men in history, bringing back the Roman Empire to rule over the West for an extra hundreds of years. One man pulled an empire and its riches to lands thought to be left to poverty and darkness. One man changed the world forever.